Hey guys, Prowl 1701 here, and today we're going to be reviewing episode 2 of The Myth Makers, which is called Small Profit, Quick Return, which is a nice little pun title, very amusing. Of course, I am watching the loose cannon reconstruction since episode 2, like every episode of Myth Makers is completely missing. The created telesnaps for this story do work a lot better than part 1, or maybe it's just because I've mentally shifted gears to them, perhaps. I've adjusted to them, they're just not bothering me. But I didn't find the telesnap reconstruction that much trouble to get through for part 2. And of course I found part 2 better than those first couple of minutes of part 1, which I talked about in that review. The story really is divided into just a few parts here. You have the part at the beginning with the Doctor and Stephen when they go looking for the TARDIS. And the Doctor finally basically admitting he's not Zeus, and him and Stephen are friends. Agamemnon being frustrated that he's been tricked and telling Odysseus to kill them and then leaving. And then Odysseus demanding the truth, and when the Doctor explains about who they really are, Odysseus doesn't kill them because his reasoning is nobody would have been dumb enough to tell me that unless it was the truth. I really like Odysseus in this. He's a highlight of this story for me. I love the way the actor is performing him, even just going off the voice work. Because he has this very theatrical, booming voice, this very loud voice. I love it. Anytime Odysseus is there, I'm enjoying the episode more. So I love the fact that he's like, nobody would have been dumb enough to tell me this is a lie, so you have to be telling the truth. And it basically tells him, I'll give you 2 days to come up with something, and you'd better come up with something or I'll look foolish, and I don't want to look foolish. The thread is really good there. And then, of course, we cut to inside Troy where the TARDIS is with Paris talking to King Priam about the TARDIS. And, of course, Prim's daughter, I forget her name, basically saying, you know, it's doom and damnation and they need to get it out of there. And, you know, she's very much this high priestess that everything is gloom and doom. And I really wouldn't want to get tangled up with her. I really wouldn't. And so they talk about maybe sacrificing the TARDIS to the gods. And then Vicky ends up coming out of the TARDIS and King, you know, introducing herself to the king, explaining she's not a sorceress, she's not a Greek, that she's from the future. And the king seems like a somewhat open-minded individual, at least. You know, he's like, well, I can't call you Vicky, so I'll call you, you know, Cressida. Or Crescenda? Crescenda? I can't remember. Which, of course, factual person, well, or at least a person from Homer's story, let's say that. So it's interesting how Vicky's already getting tied into the history of Troy. And so you have that scene there with them and Paris leaving to go fight, and the king constantly telling him, go fight, just go fight. It has some humorous moments in this story. And then we have the scene, of course, with the Dr. Stephen and Odysseus, where Stephen wants to try to go into Troy to rescue Vicky. And Odysseus lets him because he agrees that Stephen's not going to be much help there. And Odysseus is kind of saying, well, you know, if you help me get in, I'll try to protect your friend like you're asking, you know, Vicky. But I can't stop and ask every woman in there if she's your friend because that's not practical, which makes sense. You know, it's interesting that like Odysseus and Paris and most of the characters in here do have their code of honor. Like, you know, stereotypically in the old-timey medieval days, people had their code of honor, which varied from person to person, but everybody has their code they live by. So Odysseus is living by that code of letting him go because he expects the Doctor to keep his word. And I enjoy that whole scene as well. Again, it's more Odysseus. I'm liking Odysseus in this. And then the scene between Paris and Stephen is funny. When they're fighting, that's humorous. I like how Paris is like calling out to Achilles, but then he realizes he's too loud, so he's like calling at him just softly, like, Achilles, come out. So when Stephen comes up pretending to be the other person, Paris kind of doesn't want to fight, but they end up fighting. And then Stephen, you know, throws the fight. He trips on purpose. And of course, Paris gets ready to kill him, and instead, you know, Stephen's like, I surrender, I yield, you know, I give in. And Paris is like, wait, what, are you sure? I mean, wouldn't you rather just die than... And I love how Stephen just is fluffing Paris's ego here. Well, don't you know your reputation in the camp? It's greater than both of your brothers put together. And the stories I could tell your dad. Could you really? And Bentley's fluffing Paris's ego. And the actor playing Paris is leaning into that perfectly. Yeah, you could. It's actually a very humorous scene, the way it comes across in the audio. And I was amused by that. And then we get to the scene where King Pram is talking with Vicky. And that's actually pretty humorous too, where Vicky lets on, wait, I've heard about this legend of Troy. Y'all like horses? Wait a minute. And the king keeps trying to press her, well, tell me about the legend. And right before Vicky can tell him about the Trojan horse and everything, they keep getting interrupted. It's like he almost gets the knowledge he needs, but something keeps coming up. It's like we as the audience are like, and then something comes up and we're like, and then again, and something comes. It reminds me of this scene from a movie called The Inspector General. It's got Danny Kaye in it, who's a favorite actor of mine. And there's a scene where some of the higher-ups in the village are trying to poison Danny Kaye's character with poison in his drink. And every time he's about to drink it, they're all like, and then he ends up not drinking it. He goes on with the speech he's giving, and they're like, and he's like, and they're like, and then he pulls it away, and they're like, it's exactly like that. You know, something keeps happening. And then the king mentions, about, pretty women. He goes, well, because Vicky calls his other son, not Paris or Hector, but the other one, that he was really pretty. And the king's like, oh, really? Well, I never really judge whether people are attractive or not. It just causes trouble. And I'm sitting here nodding sagely at that, going, yes, so much trouble, yes. And then, of course, him mentioning that, oh, that's funny. I thought that son was a little taken with you as well, kind of foreshadowing the relationship they're going to form later in the story. It was a nice little foreshadowing with that, hinting at that. And then he starts talking about Paris and how Paris likes pretty ladies. And he's like, and that's what caused this whole problem in the first place. And I'm sitting here again going, nodding sagely, yes, that kind of thing. Yeah, you just had to have that pretty woman, Paris, the married pretty woman. And as soon as you mention it to her, Helen's like, oh, sure, yeah, I'll come with you. Oh, yeah, and that's what caused the whole problem. There's a lesson here. There's a lesson here. I found that whole bit incredibly amusing. And then the cliffhanger's pretty nice of, Vicky and Stephen recognizing each other. And, of course, the king's daughter immediately, see, they're spies, they're traitors. Kill them. I really wouldn't want to get entangled with her. So it's a really good cliffhanger. There's a lot of humorous bits in this. I enjoyed part 2 quite a bit. It has some interesting things going on. It has Odysseus being awesome. It has some nice, funny, amusing pieces in it. So I have to admit, Small Profit, Quick Return was a nice watch, and I did actually enjoy it. I want to know what you think of episode 2 of The Mythmakers, so comment down below and let me know. Other things to do. Don't forget to click the like button and the subscribe button. That helps me out, and I certainly appreciate it. I also have a Patreon if you would like to support me on that. There's a link to that down in the description below. I want to give a shout out to some of my top tier patrons, Stephen Crane, Colin Coney, and Finn Perkins. I appreciate their support, as I do the support of all of my patrons. It does make a big difference. It does help me keep the bills paid, especially lately. I also have a P.O. box if there's anything you would like to send me to look at and review, and a link to my Amazon wish list is down there as well. Most importantly, though, thank you for watching.